before. Their top player is Boyle, number 15. He averages about 20 points a game. Buddy, you gotta stick right with him. No inside penetration, shut down those passing lanes. And you gotta play tough off those boards. Negate their height advantage.
Hickory, it's time to take the floor.
I'll get preacher.
Okay. We're way past big speech time. I want to thank you for the last few months. It's been very special for me. Anybody have anything they want to say?
Yeah. Let's win this and for all the small schools who never had a chance to get here.
Okay.
I want to win for my dad. Let's win for Coach, who got us here.
Thank you.
With God of heaven, it is all one. To deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of hosts, but strength cometh from heaven.
And David put his hand in the bag and took out a stone and slung it. And it struck the Philistine on the head, and he fell to the ground. Amen.
I love you guys.
This is Brad Long, and you're listening to Monday Morning Critic Podcast.
Yeah. I wanted to open the interview. You're a big basketball fan, I believe. Am I right on that?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I've been dying to ask you this, Brad. I was waiting forever to ask you this. You know, JJ Redick, I think a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, played down the competition of what Bob Cousy played against. You know, he called them, I think, firemen and plumbers, right? Like they were like this generation of I don't want to say hacks, but
yeah,
you know, he's calling guys like Bill Russell, basically Wilt Chamberlain, all these iconic players. Yeah. And I think Gilbert Arenas kind of said the same thing. You know, basically playing up this generation and the past generation. So the best way I could explain it to those who are listening for when I put this out is you know, people have podcasts, and I know there's movie podcasts out there where they couldn't name 3 Redford movies. They couldn't name the director of The Godfather. They could. So it's like they have no business having a podcast, but that's not my decision. Not that I'm great, but at least I do my homework. I know what I'm talking about. I feel like JJ Redick and guys like that when they crap on, for lack of a better word, Cousy or any of these, you know, iconic players. I mean, it's almost ignorance on full display. Brad, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I know who JJ Redick is, and I have the utmost respect for him and his analysis and his game, but I think he misspoke there. My take has always been, because even with, you know, the Hoosiers thing, you know, people say, you know, or during that time period, we would kill that team. You know, that's what you hear a lot. And I fall down on the side that everything's relative. You know, for that time period, that was the cream of the crop. And as time goes on, I think with developments in technology, weights, things like that, I think it's pretty safe to say athletes, the average height of man keeps going up. So my point is, I think that as we go on in time, athletes get bigger, quicker, stronger, that type of thing. But to me, it's all relative to that time period. So during that time period, Bob Cousy, and I hate it when I hear people, you know, and how can you badmouth Bill Russell? I mean, probably the greatest of all time if you consider his whole body of work. So I would tell you that I don't agree with JJ Redick on that. I think that you can't look at it that way. You know, are you going to say then that, you know, the NBA All-Star team from the year 2076 might handle Giannis and this group today? it's possible, but you have to realize as time goes on, human beings are getting bigger, quicker, stronger because of all of the technology, because of the work, things that are available to us. So I think that's a relative thing. I don't think you can. I think you have to look at each time period and go back and say, if you're playing against Bob Cousy, that at that time, that was the best. That was the standard. And I think you have to give props to those guys.
And Brad, compare to your point. That's a great point. And compare the high end Michael Jordan, the Converse All Stars that Cousy was wearing, or that you guys wore in Hoosiers.
Right.
I mean, those shoes are not comfortable. They look great. They're vintage, all that great stuff. I don't know. I just think the plumber firefighter thing is not fair because I mean, these guys had to do things in the off season that were not available to players now. You sign autographs, you get thousands from that. You have endorsement deals, you get thousands from that. I should say millions from that. So it's you're right to compare that. It's not to me. JJ Redick was a great player, but he comes across as ignorant when he says stuff like that.
I think somebody will set him down, and maybe somebody already has, and say, I want you to think about what you said. And you hit on something there that I'll expound on. I think of golf. Look at the equipment that Bobby Jones and those guys played with. And really, it's the same thing with basketball. You make a good point on shoes. The basketball is even different.
Yeah.
Look, I can't believe those guys. I tell you, I tend to fall a little bit on the other side. I even admire him more to be able to make shots and dribble with a ball like that. So I think you have to look at each time frame capsule of that time period, and that's how you base it off of. And then you say, to make a statement like, Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook would run circles around Bob Cousy. You have to throw them back in that time period with everything that they had, and that's where you get a true gauge. I don't think you can say this team would kill that team. That's really unfair, I think, to make that assessment. I think that is kind of ignorant to do that.
Yeah, and how would you compare Mickey Mantle to Albert Pujols? How do you do it? To each generation is their own thing. I don't know. I just, because we were going to talk today, I figured I'd throw that by you.
No, I'm on your side on that, and I like JJ, and I feel like I think I know what he's trying to say, but he's coming at it from the wrong angle. I think he's got to look at it like each particular. You don't look at it like this team would kill that team. You just can't, because of all the other variables involved. And I'm butchering this explanation, but I think if you gave me 10 minutes, I could make you a list of the different things that each time period had. And then, you're not really comparing apples and apples, is the way I would say it.
Right. I mean, you let me start a team today. I'll take Bird and Magic over anybody in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
Please, let's play that game, But one of the things, Brad, that I knew researching your life, I knew you were into is motivational speaking and speaking to people. How do you like that? Do you still do it? Is that difficult? To talk about that, your experience in that.
Yeah, long story short, my father-in-law got me my first gig right after Hoosiers came out. He asked me what I would think about coming to speak to his Rotary group in the hometown.
Wow.
And I didn't think much about it. I wasn't afraid to get up in front of people and speak, because it's what I do with my job. I work for Jostens. I'm up in front of kids all the time, making sales pitches and so forth. So that part of it didn't bother me. It was just, would they be interested in what I had to say? And so I came at it from, if I'm in their shoes, what might be interesting? And it might simply just be, the background of the making of the movie Hoosiers. What are the little tidbits that the average person might not know about? Like, we used glycerin water for sweat whenever we weren't actually sweating. We did a lot of running on set. That's a special effect that they use. We used rock candy for the breaking glass. That's what they use in films. And then they give it a sound effect to look like it's actual glass breaking. Things like that, background type things. And then I'm a man of faith. I don't make any bones about that. I speak to a lot of church groups and youth groups about my faith. But that led to then a couple other engagements. And then over time, I've had probably north of 300 speaking engagements to different types of groups. And I do different types of talks. I'm smart enough to realize what gets me on the stage is, they want to hear about the movie and that. And so I always kind of segue that or dovetail that in with kind of my motivational speak. And I do a couple of different acronyms. One is I can do, and initiative, confidence, attitude, nerve, and discipline, and opportunity. And I just try to think, if I'm in their shoes, what are some bits of information that maybe I didn't have at that young age that might help them, you know?
Yeah.
So it's been a labor of love. I enjoy doing it as time goes on. You know, Hoosiers is 37 years old.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And so a lot of the engagements I get will be older groups that, you know, either were alive during that time period or remember the movie. Invariably, you'll get a younger group that maybe had seen the movie on DVD or at mom and dad's basement, seeing it on tape and are curious. So, but yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I still really enjoy doing that, and you know, try to accommodate people if they're willing to hear an old man wax on about Hoosiers.
Oh no, not no old man here, no way. But you know what? And before we talk about Hoosiers, I did want to also say that, you know, I don't want to go back again, but we talk about the '80s, right? Hoosiers comes out in '86.
Right.
I have to say, the '80s did comedies, Brad, and they did sports movies like no other decade. Like, I can't think of a comedy recently, and I've said this before, or a sports movie recently that was better than the stuff that came out in the '80s. You know, Field of Dreams, I think, was '89. Natural was '86, I think, or '85, in that ballpark.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, Bull Durham. I mean, I can go on and on. Like, you know, Rudy was early '90s, but like, I can't. You know, I can't think of something recently. Miracle was okay, but that now is like, that movie's almost, it's got to be over 10 years old. So it's like, recently, I don't know what the fall off is, but I don't know how Hoosiers isn't, it's appreciated big time, but I feel like, not forget about it as a sports movie, just as a movie, it's one of the best of all time.
Well, bless your heart. I always give the any credit of Hoosiers I give to the writer and director, David Anspall and Angelo Pizzo. I always start with them. It was their idea to come back and do a movie about Indiana high school basketball. They were fraternity brothers at Indiana University, went out to USC, studied film, and had always had that dream. And it starts with them because Angelo's script and David's directing. I mean, the biggest thrill I get nowadays, Derek, is I'll have a gentleman, I'd have to say in his 80s now, frankly, that's where we are now, that will say to me, you know, that was the way it was. You know, we had those barbershop scenes. We had those caravans to the game. We had those pep sessions. I mean, you don't even hear much about pep sessions anymore. Some schools don't even allow them. You know, it's, but you're right on the money. I mean, that was a real big period for sports movies. Chariots of Fire was in there. I mean, there was just a lot of sports movies that have sort of held their ground over time. When ESPN or whatever does their list, you'll see several of them during that time frame in, you know, the top 20 or 30. So I think you're right on that assessment.
I'll tell you, because I had David Neerdorf on. I was talking with him earlier.
Yeah.
He set us up, which I'm so happy about. Yeah, great guy. And, you know, he was on, you know, I'll tell you who loves Hoosiers. And David was on this show. You were on the show as well. Dan Patrick loves Hoosiers. And he gets it. And I said this in David's interview. Rich Eisner loves Hoosiers. I mean, the sports guys get it. Like, the people that know it get it. Like, Hoosiers. I mean, I was rewatching for our interview. I know the movie's 37 years old, but it never loses anything with me, Brad. And some movies I rewatch, I'm like, ooh, that didn't age so well. Hoosiers, I'm watching it like it's a documentary actually taking place before my eyes.
Yeah, and that, I think that is a testament to those guys and their script. I've said for years, and this is part of my speakers table, if you will, part of my presentation, is I say that Hoosiers is certainly a movie about basketball. There's no doubt about that. But to me, it's a movie about redemption, second chances. And that is a formula for life. Anytime an underdog overachieves and does well, that makes people feel good about themselves because it makes them feel like they can overcome something, and that will never go away. And yes, it's about basketball, but you see the coach getting a second chance, Buddy getting a second chance, the town drunk getting a second chance, and that's what life is about, second chances. And so it certainly is a basketball movie, but then you sprinkle on top of all that, Derek, the fact that event actually happened, and then you got something. It's based on a true story. And you mentioned a couple things there when you were talking about movies and different movies, but also I think that anytime you have a formula, it's one thing if it's a good story. Storytelling is what movie making is all about. But anytime I think you sprinkle in the fact that this event actually happened, or you start the movie with based on true events or based on true story, I don't know about you, but it kind of piques my interest a little bit more.
Yeah.
As a general rule, when that is at the beginning, when you know that is not something so far-fetched and just beyond the realm of credibility, it's even more interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. Did you like being on Dan Patrick's show? Because he's such
so let me tell you about that. You mentioned a couple guys that really liked Hoosiers, Rich and Dan. I love being on Dan's show. Great guy. It was a fun interview, much like this. I mean, just back and forth. He busted my chops a little bit on let's see, what was it on the shot making ability. And I reminded him that I had played in college, and in the script didn't call for me to get to take too many shots. So we were going back and forth on that. But two other guys I got to mention, since you mentioned their names, I'll drop a couple of names here. But George Steinbrenner was a big Hoosiers fan. Evidently, he showed it to the Yankees organization and worked into a lesson plan into it about how I haven't heard all the details. Angelo knows about that one. The other one is Pat Riley. Pat Riley showed Hoosiers to his Showtime Lakers. Talk about magic before they play the Celtics. Think about that for a minute.
Wow.
So there's a couple guys, sports backgrounds. You could make an argument very high level in both of their fields, basketball and baseball, that also took an interest in the movie. So that was always really flattering. We would hear stories like that.
Yeah, I might have said Rich Eisner. It's Eisen. I made a mistake.
Rich Eisen.
Yeah.
There's an Eisner out there too. I think he's with Disney. I always get mixed up.
Yeah. I always misspeak, but it's such a. And while we're on it, I've seen this before, but this is also on your website. Maybe my favorite photo, not just for sports movies, but this. It just speaks. Look at you next to Ollie, and I mean that's just such a great picture.
Derek, you know where that was taken? That was taken behind the gym where we filmed the sectional scenes at Deer Lick Sectional in Brownsburg, Indiana. There was a playground back there, and actually my mother took that picture. We lost her a couple of years ago. God rest her soul. She was on set a lot and was taking a lot of the pictures, and a lot of the pictures in my portfolio are courtesy of Nancy Long. My mom took a lot of pictures, including that one.
Oh my God! Your mom took that picture?
She took that one.
Wow! Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, but what a beautiful picture that is.
Thank you.
Holy cow! And just they say pictures 1,000 words. That picture is Hoosiers.
I think so too. It encapsulates everything. I mean, you can almost feel the chemistry in that picture. And yet you see the little boys in us too. I mean, we were high school kids, portraying high school kids. I was actually the oldest one. I was 23. The other end of the spectrum was Ollie, Wade Skank, who was actually 18, was a senior when we shot that movie. But, you get 7, 8 guys together, that age group, you're either going to have chemistry or not. And we did. It couldn't have gone better. It went the correct direction. And we're just like old college roommates whenever we see each other. You know how that is. You haven't seen them for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You pick up right where you left off.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, when I started this podcast, how many ever years ago, one of my first guests, and I'm so thankful, is Angelo Pizzo when he came on. Like, what a good man! Like you and David. Just, I'm really appreciative of that. You brought up one thing early on. Dennis Hopper. I was watching an interview. Who plays, for those listening, Shooter. He was adamant about one thing, Brad. I don't know if you've heard this story. He said he cannot be at the final game because that's not how alcoholism works. He's not going to just say, okay, it was important to Dennis Hopper that he be in the hospital because of the disease, because of what it can do to you. I don't know if you've heard that before, but do you agree with what he said? I think he's dead on with his point.
Well, let me tell you about Dennis since you brought it up. Here's a guy, and I remember when we met Dennis, we all knew about Easy Rider. That's the first thing you think about. He was in Apocalypse Now. He actually grew up a little bit with James Dean. He was in Rebel Without a Cause and Giant with James Dean. So it was like getting to walk and talk with James Dean. We learned a lot about James, an Indiana boy, But the thing I always admired about Dennis was he told the press, he was very transparent. He said, this is a role that I have practiced for my whole life. He was into the drug scene. He was alcoholic and all those things. He didn't shy away from it. But the thing I admired about that, I'll tell you, he went so far. He told me this, Derek. He said, Brad, basically, I don't remember the 70s. He said he remembers a little bit filming Apocalypse Now at the end of that decade. So that all sounds bad. The good news is he turned his life around. He actually counseled young men about, drugs and all that. And so there's another example of a true life, real to life second chance.
Yeah.
And so that role that he played, he would tell the press, I know this guy. I know this man. And that I always admired that about Dennis. I think that in the movie, ironically, here you had an alcoholic who got a second chance. I think, I can't speak for Dennis. We lost him some years ago, but I think if he were here, he would say, I like the fact that was in the movie too, because I can help people through that. And so there's a lot of teaching things in that, And on a lighter note on Dennis, I got to tell you this one before I forget it, since you brought him up. I didn't know a lot about, none of us guys really knew much about acting. We were all Hoosiers from Indiana. I played Jacob Marley and Scrooge in the 5th grade. That was my acting resume. But I always tell people in most sports movies, they look for actors and hope they can play basketball. This one, they looked for basketball players and hoped they could act. They took a chance on us, and they didn't give us too many lines. But I always just remember David Anspall telling us the art of acting is not acting.
Right.
Just be yourself with a little bit more energy. And so, but back on Dennis, I got to tell you this story. On the acting part of it, we didn't know much about method acting, really what that meant. But here's a perfect example of method acting, and we saw it happening. So this was the Deer Lick sectional scenes where shooter, Dennis, has to walk in, stumble in. He's been drinking, and remember, he embarrasses his son, sectional, all that. So before those scenes were being shot, there was some commotion over kind of in the foyer area that leads into the gym. And a couple of guys said, come look at this. Dennis was back there with the baseball bat doing Dizzy Lizzy.
Going around like
Dizzy, you put your nose on the bat and go around. And so he was doing that to help with the stumbling. And so when you see him walk into that gym, Derek, stumbling around, he's dizzy. He's about to fall on his face. Isn't that something?
Oh, my God.
So the irony, though, of a guy who in real life had drug issues, had been an alcoholic, and had to resort to the method acting part of it to make himself actually stumble around. I just think it's an unbelievable irony, because he wasn't drinking then, wasn't drinking on set. So he had to find another way to conjure up really kind of the way his life had been at one point. So I think that's a fascinating story. I tell anybody that'll listen that story.
That's awesome. And he did 2 movies in '86. Blue Velvet was the other. He was clean. He makes it known he was clean and sober for both. But to hear the methods he went to get that down, I mean, that. Brad, do you ever feel when you were, you get at 23, you get the role. Are you ever like, is this really happening? Like, is this like, I can't even, like, I'm 48. I'm 48. If somebody said, look, we want you to play this, whatever, right. Even to today, I'd be like, oh my God. Like, I'd be overcome with emotion. I think.
Let me tell you my answer. I'll answer it this way. I had just come off my college career, played at a little school in Kansas, Southwestern College, NAI school, really enjoyed my time down there, had really fun career, and it's good basketball in Kansas.
Big time basketball.
Even though I come from Indiana, Kansas is another hotbed for basketball. So a lot of good ball down there. So anyway, the reason I tell you that story, so I graduated from college in May of 1985. So I get the role after wasn't even going to try out for it. I had a lot of my friends say, you look young for your age. That's back when I had more hair, looked a little younger. And friends said, hey, give it a shot. You still look young for your age. So one thing led to another, and I got the part. But here's what I would tell you about it. Instead of, I was sort of in shock and awe, but honestly, when we started filming, to me, it was like an extension of college. We would have in college field media days where the media would come out. We would practice scrimmage, shoot shots, answer questions of the press, go down to this other media outlet, talk to them. And so in a weird roundabout way, I might have been the most prepared for it because I had played college basketball. Now, Steve Holler, Raid, played 1 year. He was in his first year at DePaul and may have experienced a little bit of that. But I believe, if I'm right, I think we're the only 2 that played college basketball. So what's my point? To me, it was like an extension of a big new media conference. I don't think it really hit me that we're filming a movie. I just kind of went back to my remembrances of those college press conferences, and that's what it kind of seemed like, especially because it was stop and go. You filmed and then you quit for a while. That was much like those media days.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question in a roundabout way, I don't think it really hit me that we were filming a movie at that point. As you're doing it, that's what it seemed like to me. I can't speak for the other guys because I don't know if they had experienced that, and maybe it was glitz and glamour to them,
Right. Do you guys still converse? Are you in like group chats with them? Are you guys always still communicating?
Yeah, we do.
Because I get it's funny that you say like a fraternity. I really feel like I really believe you guys are a team, and I think that's how the years have treated it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for noticing that. I think we worked on that chemistry. For example, before we started filming, there was a couple of weeks there of prep time where we all stayed at this hotel it would have been the northwest side of Indianapolis. I think it's now gone, Ramada Inn. But anyway, it was like our own little city. A lot of the cast and the gaffers and the lighting people all stayed there. The reason I tell you that story is we had a couple of weeks to kind of get to know each other, get to bond. We had roommates, much like college. My roommate was Kent Poole, played Merle. And then we also got to scrimmage a lot. There was a couple of local gyms around. I knew one of the ADs. My position with Jostens had some advantages. I knew a couple of the ADs around, told them kind of what was happening. They'd open the gym for us and let us go scrimmage. The reason that's significant is not only did we bond off the court at the hotel, playing cards, euchre. It's a big game in Indiana. But we also bonded on the court and kind of learned how to play with each other. So really that 2 weeks of prep time off and on the court, I think helped the film.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to tell you, Gene Hackman is amazing. His performance, it's truly in rarefied air. I have to ask you, so when David was on the podcast, he had I think a different take than what you have on Gene. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. He thought Gene was a phenomenal actor, but once it was cut, maybe not so nice. And I'm cleaning that up a lot. I mean, it's in the interview. Yeah. But what's your experience with Gene? Was it the same thing? Was it different? Did you see the things the same way David saw it?
Yeah, no, I know what David means by that, and I'm not going to disagree with what David. Here's my assessment of that, and as the older I get, the more I understand it. But I think Gene in his position. Let's start with the fact that they really had to coax him into doing the film.
Yeah,
it was kind of a hard sell. I don't know if you know this, but they wanted Jack Nicholson. David was friends with Jack. He was filming The Two Jakes.
I heard him, and I heard Burt Reynolds too. I'm like, that's
a whole nother story. Yeah, and that would have been a completely different kind of movie. But anyway, when they picked Gene, Gene was very nice to us off camera. He was a little bit shy, believe it or not. I found out with kind of the big hitters, whether it was Gene or Sheb Woolley, Dennis Hopper, Barbara Hershey. It's almost like acting is their outlet. When they let themselves go, they're a little bit withdrawn to some degree offset. Probably what David means by that, Gene had some creative differences. Yeah. And if Gene were sitting right here with me, I'd say it right in front of his face. He knows there were some creative differences in how the film was being directed and shot. At one point, what I remember is that he thought there should have been more about dialogue with him and Dennis and Barbara and less basketball action. And David Anspaugh stood up for himself, I'll never forget it, and respectfully disagreed, was the quote I remember, with Gene on that, and said, this is a different kind of a movie. And the reason I tell you that, Derek, so that may be what David's talking about. There were a couple, I wouldn't necessarily call them shouting matches, but loud discussions between those two about how they were being portrayed, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, cut to the chase. I have heard all these years later that Gene has said David was right and I was wrong.
Wow.
He got that one right.
Yeah.
And Gene will say to this day, I think if you can get a hold of him, he's out west. But he'll say of all the movies he's done, Unforgiven, French Connection, Popeye Doyle, Lex Luthor, Superman, the one he gets asked the most about is Hoosiers.
Well, it's his best. It's one of his top three. I'm glad he came around because he's absolutely marvelous as he on screen. I mean, you guys look like the complete team, which is but you do such a wonderful job as Buddy. And I was watching this trying to examine it a little more. Buddy is a defensive specialist because he's always on the other team's best player. Is that how would you describe Buddy? Am I right on that?
I'll tell you what's funny about that. My college teammates really let me have it. They said, Long, we remember you playing one end of the court, the offense. I don't remember defense. So for me, and to expound on that, my character sketch read, let me think now. There were three. It was captain of the team, defensive specialist, and cocky. That was my character script. And so anybody that knows me well, I'm embarrassed by those descriptions. I don't really have ever thought of myself as being cocky, probably to a fault. I probably should have been a little bit more sure of myself all through college, and might have served me better. But anyway, you have to have some level of confidence. But I would have never considered myself cocky. I definitely wasn't a defensive expert. That's why I played. Honestly, that's why I played NAIA ball. I could shoot, could pass, I could dribble. I wasn't quick enough, D1 quick, to play the defense you need to play. And it reared its ugly head whenever we would play Oklahoma, Texas, Brigham Young. Yeah. I would have to stand it back another half step. So that's when I got it. But back on Gene, let me tell you something about Gene. And I agree with what David said. He's right. And Gene would probably say, Gene would probably say, I was a horse's tail at the beginning of that. It probably made the film better, honestly, because it's like marriage. I mean, show me a couple that never fights. There's problems there. I think that makes you bigger and makes your marriage stronger. Yeah. Same thing with Gene, and this is a Gene story. Rather than being a prima donna, walking in and saying, show me my spots, give me my lines, get out of my way, he said, I want to go to some high school basketball practices. Wow. And I remember we did that. He watched and learned. He watched how they talk, their body language. And I give a lot of credit to Gene Hackman for that. Here's a guy who did a lot of parts, but he'd never done a high school basketball coach. Yeah. So he wasn't too big for it. He said, I want to learn. I want to do this right. I've always admired that.
Yeah, and I know you've talked about this next topic, the famous scene that was cut, okay? And there's a whole movie. David talked about this. You've talked about this, where Buddy is thrown off the team, but there's never a scene where he enters back, where he comes back. The cut scene is available on YouTube. I think I have it on a couple DVDs.
Yeah. It's on the deleted DVDs. It's on the deleted scenes on the DVD too.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I like the scene. It would have made, if they could somehow made it work. I just don't like how it all happens. I don't like the conversation with the girl before you come in with, you pulled in with your car. Gene's kind of reading a book. I get why they left it on the floor, but I love the dialogue between the two of you. I thought that needed to be, I mean, it doesn't affect the movie, but it would have maybe completed. It
would have channeled the gap, Derek. What I've said all these years later. David Anspaugh will be the first one to tell you, to this day, he and Angelo both are very upset they cut it. They felt like it was necessary to explain. I was the most vocal of the twosome that got kicked out. I take Whit with me. I pound the door. I'm the, and all of a sudden I'm back on the team. So I'll tell you the background on this. The people at that time at Orion Pictures, they're the people that say this goes, this stays. They're not really there in the trenches. So they felt like in their mind that I looked enough like Jimmy Chitwood that audiences would be confused if I came back on the team. To the contrary, it was the other way. The media, everybody was saying, especially people that knew me, said, hey, we love the film, but why didn't they leave the scene in there when they found out there's another scene? But that's why they cut it. Orion, bigwigs, thought that I looked too much like Jimmy and it would confuse the audience. It actually was the other way. It was more confusing by leaving it out. Yeah. And I had no sour grapes. I'm not a prima donna. I mean, it would have been, for me, it wasn't about, hey, they cut my scene. It's just that it would have channeled that gap, like you say. Would have explained how Buddy gets back on the team,
Yeah.
And so audiences are supposed to assume that Buddy straightened up, saw the error of his ways, and rejoined the team. But it would have made more sense to leave it in. And David and Angelo still feel that way.
Yeah, and obviously they make amends because it's Buddy at the end that says, I want to win this one for Coach, right? Do I have that correct?
Yeah. How about that for Ernie? The guy that gets kicked out.
Yeah.
And that would have even had more meaning had that scene been left in.
I agree.
In that scene, you've seen it. It's a pretty good little dialogue, and it's about second chances.
It is.
I said, Coach, I made a mistake. I'm playing for Hickory my whole life. I don't remember it verbatim. I haven't seen it for a while. But it would have channeled the gap. There's another second chance that you didn't see,
And Brad, here's Norman Dale, who in his previous job hit one of his players. Second chance for him, so it would have been very appropriate. I get it.
It would have flown. It would have flowed.
Yeah. And when Buddy walks out, he tears down poor Ollie. He goes, "Have good luck winning with 4.5 players."
I know.
Poor Ollie. What is he like as a person? The actor that plays Ollie, it escaped me.
Great guy, Wade Skank.
Wade,
great guy. You know what? I'm not just saying this. Every player, I love them all. I mean, we everybody has their own little idiosyncrasies and things that we rib each other about. You know how guys are. You get them together, develop their own little, pranks that we play on each other. But we would go to war for each other. And Wade, we every now and depends on what mood we're in. We'll call each other by our character name. I'll say Ollie now. Ollie was portrayed in the film as a poor basketball player. You saw the part that he played. He's actually a pretty good little player. He was acting to be that bad. Yeah. And I've said for years, and I know you'll understand this, athletes understand this, you almost have to be good at something to play that down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was Ollie. He was good enough to figure out how to make himself, play badly, look poorly. But he's a pretty good little player, but great guy. Yeah, all of them are good guys. And we lost Kent. I'm sad about that every day. He was my roommate, and that's a whole nother book I could write, but we think about him all the time.
Sad. Absolutely sad. And I was like kind of noting the big moments that Buddy has. He has a lot in this movie. Like after I had David on the podcast, I was going back to see how many big moments Everett had. There were a lot.
Yeah.
Buddy has just as many, like the big steal in the semis. All these wonderful, the fact that Dentine hasn't sponsored you yet for your motivational speaker makes me want to call them up right now.
That's funny you said that, because at one time Wrigley, who I think there were talks at one time, if you can believe that, years and years ago. And Derek, I'm a gum chewer. I've said to this day, I think Angelo must have seen me when I was trying out chewing. I don't know if he worked it into the script or not, but that couldn't have been more apropos for Buddy with the Dentine line. And I will tell you this, since you brought it up, Gene gave each member of the team a plaque at the end of filming. And on the plaque, it had our real name, our character name, 1985 Hoosiers, and one of the lines that we had from the movie. And mine was the Dentine line. And he told me that was his single favorite line in the whole film. It was Dentine.
It's funny you say, because the look on his face doesn't look like acting. He legitimately enjoyed that line from you.
He makes that scene work. Everybody always talks to me about it, and I'm flattered. But the only reason anybody talks about that scene is his reaction. Like, I can't believe the kid took me that serious. And I had to be real careful in my reaction and not. If you go back and see it, I remember I kind of smirked. I didn't laugh, but he said, and the point of that is. Something like Buddy stick to him like chewing gum, but I want to know the end of the game, what flavor he is. And I have like a smirk, like, Coach, I get that. I'm a gum chewer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But none of that is anything to do with me or my talent. It is literally Gene's reaction that makes that whole scene work. And, it's his favorite line in the movie, but I will tell you, and you may have this on your list, people invariably will ask me what my favorite scene is, and that was fun to do, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't even anything to do with me. My favorite scene probably is the hospital scene. That is so genuine and so emotional. I love that scene, and David's in that one. That probably is my favorite scene. My favorite line from the movie. Now I'm going overboard here, but I'm on a roll. My favorite line from the movie, to me, encapsulates the whole movie, and it's when Gene walks out for the first time on the court, his first game, before he opens the door, he says, "Welcome to Indiana basketball."
Yeah,
that's my favorite line. That's my favorite line in the movie. Yeah.
And I love when they're talking, at the end where they're talking about who's going to take that shot, and he says, "I'll make it," and you're the first one over to hug Jimmy after the game winner. People, I noticed that too. That I don't know what it is about this movie, but I like this in The Natural for some reason just hit me like not even like so much about sports, Brad, but it's like life and second chances, and I don't know what it is. Like I get the same feeling when I see Roy Hobbs discovering he has a child that I do watching this team of from a small town just get along, and it makes it so much more beautiful that you guys still talk, and like there's so many layers to this. It's so hard to unpack it.
You're right, and you hit on something there. I'll tell you my feeling on it, why I think it does well, and like The Natural, same types of recipe. You can have a person that doesn't really maybe even necessarily like sports that will watch Hoosiers
Yeah.
or The Natural or Rudy, and they walk away feeling good. They not doesn't mean it made them into a football fan or a baseball or basketball fan. To me, that's the value. That's the recipe. If you can touch emotion, sure, it's a sports movie. It's about basketball. Goodness sakes. I mean, we all get it. But I've said for years, it is about redemption. It's about second chances. And whether it's basketball or ping pong or baking, a baking competition, when somebody that shouldn't be able to do this does it, or they overachieve, intrinsically, we humans, that makes us feel good. And here's why. Because down deep in the recesses of our brain, they think if they did it, I can do it. I can achieve whatever it might be. Might be getting a good grade on a test, a job promotion, position at your church.
Yep.
That's why I think those movies do well. It's not like one dimensional. It covers everything.
Brad, do you remember the first time you saw it with an audience?
Yeah, and I have to be honest with you. I'm transparent about everything I say. The first time I saw it was at the premiere, and I have to tell you, I didn't walk away. What's the word I want here? I wasn't blown away, and I figured out why. So let me cut to the second part of that. The second time I saw it, I loved it. It sunk in. Here's what I found out, and Gene had warned us about this. He told us, and this is hard for me to believe too, but he told us when we were filming, he doesn't watch any of these movies. Never watched these Popeye Doyle portrayal. He doesn't watch them ever. And we said, why? We're 18, 19, 20. What? You don't watch? And he said, yeah, I don't want to see my double chin, my receding hairline. And so, you're 18, 19, 20. You think, he's lost his marbles. What? Crazy. Why wouldn't he watch Lex Luthor? So what I would tell you, when the first time I saw Hoosiers, you're very self-conscious. I was anyway.
Yeah.
And I saw little things that I thought maybe I could have played that differently, or I could have. And Derek, it's like I didn't allow myself to enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was drilling too deep. I was too focused on don't mess up, don't mess up, rather than just enjoying the film. And so what's my point? I hate to be the guy that tells you, no, my first time I saw it, it wasn't like my favorite movie, and I was going crazy. The second time I told myself, and I had a couple people that shared the way I felt and said, they had told them, you just need to relax and enjoy it and quit being self-conscious about stuff. Not everybody's looking at every little mistake.
Yeah, right.
And so isn't that crazy? So it took me the second movie before I enjoyed it.
How about a family and whether it's kids or wife? When you guys sit down to watch it, I don't know how many times you rewatch it. I mean, I rewatch it like I was in it, but I don't know about you. Like, how many times do you see it, and what's your family's response?
Yeah, you probably won't believe this, but I'm telling you, honest to God's truth here. My wife of 37 years, my two kids that are grown now. My daughter's 32, just turned 32. My son's 26. We really, in all the years that we've been together and growing up, of course, they weren't even born when I shot the movie. My wife and I got married after the movie and blah, blah, blah. But we never were a family that I would say, hey, come, let's all sit in the room and watch what Dad did. We just never did that. I let them see it whenever they got to it on their own. I know that's hard to believe, but Lisa and I, my wife, we just never really pushed that envelope. I probably all the way through have seen it all the way through, maybe 9 or 10 times. Now what I will do, if it's on somewhere and I click it, I'll see it. I'll watch a couple scenes and then I'll move on. And I can't really explain why. It's just that I think early on I got so much of it. It's not something you find yourself, at least for me anyway. I can't speak for the other guys. And to answer your question, my family we've never actually sat down as a family and watched it together. Not once. There's been times my kids have watched it. My daughter watched it with their youth group once, about 5 years ago. Said my dad was in this, we're going to watch it. So they kind of do it on their own. It might be different with my grandkids. I don't know. I've got a 5-year-old, soon to be 6 granddaughter, and a grandson who's 3. and I'm not going to push it on them either. But if they ask me about it, I might, unlike what I did with my own kids, sit them down and say, "Hey, you want to watch Papa on film for fun?" I don't know.
That's so cool.
Cross that bridge when I get a little older, you know.
Yeah, that's so cool. Two last questions. Thank you for all this time, Brad.
Yeah.
Any memorabilia from the film that you have outside of Gene's plaque?
I do. I've got quite a bit. Sadly, a lot of it, not a lot of it, but I've got quite a bit of it in a couple tubs in my attic. And what the reason I say sadly, at some point, I will, I'll need to figure out, it shouldn't just be sitting up there. Now, having said that, I'm not an idiot. I've got quite a few items that I've donated to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Yeah. There's a Milan Museum. There's a lot of pieces out there. My jersey that I wore in the film is in the entrance when you walk into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. And I'm honored by that. And it's not even about me. I don't even think it says this is Buddy's jersey. It's just my jersey. It's just it's a commentary on how much the movie has meant to the state. And there's these little bobbleheads of us. That cracks me up when I think about it. They've got a bobblehead of us, and that's another story. But so I've got some of the memorabilia. Some of it, Derek, I have given to the Hoosier gym. For instance, I had the old, if you watch the film, again, you'll see Hickory Huskers. It's a big sign, maroon and gold. I think it's in our home gym.
Wow.
If I remember right. Mm-hmm. And it was a fire sale the last day of filming. Everybody said, whatever it nailed down, you can take. So all us players were grabbing stuff. And that happened to be two of the pieces that I got. They sat in my attic for, 27 years when I finally said, this is ridiculous. This belongs back at the gym. And so they kind of refurbished it, and it's back in the gym now.
Good.
Which should be.
Yeah.
So the older I get, I turned 60 in June. I'm starting to use my head here a little bit. Some of this stuff needs to go places rather than just sit up there, But
Brad, should I give you my address now or after we get done with this?
There you go. I mean, somebody's going to be the caretaker of this. And of course, I'm going to start with my kids. My son is involved in filmmaking and all that, so he might be the logical one to do with. He'll be more creative than I am about what to do with it. But I'll also talk to my daughter and say, this is just probably going to go to a museum unless there's anything you want. And they'll be better caretakers, I'm sure, than I have. But I have given a lot of it in good places.
I live 15 minutes from the Hall of Fame, the NBA Hall of Fame, and I can't believe that more of that stuff, whether from you or whoever, isn't there, or from other classic basketball. Like, I know it's the NBA, but like Hoosiers is as part of basketball as the Boston Celtics are. I'm sorry.
Glory Days was a great film.
Yes,
good on the
one.
Texas Western. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, what a great, So, there's people smarter than me that know what they want, what they don't want. But I hadn't really thought about that. That'd be such an honor and a privilege to have something there. I know if they were to call me or contact me, I would have some things that they might want. They might not. I know they've got lots of things there. But that's an idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, anybody goes. I mean, how many people that go to the Hall of Fame love Hoosiers? Probably a good 90%, 100%.
Yeah.
Last question: when you were done filming this, ever at all, did you ever consider pursuing acting even a little bit?
Not really. I mean, not seriously. Mind you, I was the oldest player. I had just graduated college, was getting ready to start my job with Johnston's. I was getting married in December, which I'm still with my wife that I married at that time. Mm-hmm. We're still together all these years later, 37 years. And I think if I would have been 17, 18, like Wade, Ollie, I might have thought, I'm young, I might, and might have gone out to Hollywood and probably fallen flat on my face, realistically speaking. But because I was a little older, maybe a little more mature, maybe, however you want to look at it, I maybe realized the odds on doing that. And I was no actor. I got a lucky break. Because I had played college basketball and had some level of skill, they did want the basketball to be somewhat authentic. I think of Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox, and I love Michael J. Fox. It's a good movie. But if you watch that, those players are awful, terrible. I don't think they've ever played basketball in their life. They would show clips of them shooting a horrible shot, and then they'd show the rim and the ball go in. Hoosiers was not like that. We actually made all of our own shots. Yeah. And so they might have taken the chance, though, on the acting part, and that's where I give all the credit to Dave and Angelo. They didn't give us too many lines to mess it up. You know.
Yeah. It's an all-timer. It's funny that you said it too, because there's a movie, Tony Danza's in Angels in the Outfield.
Yes,
and
I
I says
remember that.
he can't throw worth a lick. I mean, it's
No.
it's all over the place.
And that's the thing. Most people, and this is the thing. You know, you got to be careful. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade or diss anybody here, but you've got a part of the population that loves sports, that will watch it, understand it, can kind of see through that. And then you've got some folks, and that's fine. They're just not around it much. They may not know the difference. You know, what's a good shot? What's a proper baseball throw? Is that realistic? And so, part of when those movies are made, they may be catering to all different kinds of age groups. But the true sports fans, and you get it, you're one of them. We're the ones that are going to say, I don't think he's ever played baseball. That looking through the football. I mean, I don't think he's a football. We're going to do that.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing is, the way Hoosiers looks, it's such beautiful cinematography. Like, I feel like I'm in Indiana it's just so stunning. And Jerry Goldsmith's music is
beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful.
He got an Oscar nomination for the score. Didn't get it that year. That was another controversial thing where he didn't use union members. I have to go back and read all my notes on that. But Dennis Hopper got the other one for Best Supporting.
Yeah.
Michael Caine got it that year for Hannah and Her Sisters. But it was a real honor to be just mentioned in the mix. But you're right, the cinematography, and I'm biased. I'm a Hoosier boy. I grew up. I love all 4 seasons here, Derek. We get all 4 of them here in Central Indiana.
Yep.
Well, I will tell you, as much as I love the summer, the fall in Indiana might be amongst the best around. I mean, they come from all over to go to a place called Brown County. Artists go there from all over the world to paint in the fall. And it's, a lot of the movie was set in the fall. And so I hear you, brother. I mean, it's beautiful here. I love to call it home.
Yeah. And Brad, thank you for this interview. And more importantly, thank you for impacting my life with your work. I appreciate that.
Bless your heart. Well, thank you. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Keep doing it. And if you ever need anything, seek me out, holler at me.
You rock, Brad. Thank you so much. Health and happiness to you, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Bye-bye. Yep.
Bye-bye.